What's happening? Oh, Dan Tate, you were playing it on your phone too.
It was.
The music's already stressful enough. Don't prolong it.
Well, and the timing was terrible because I'm like, oh, here, let me do this. And then right as it ended, that was a mistake.
I know it's stressful, but we haven't done this for 2 weeks. So this feels like we're brand new at this again.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's been a while and I feel a bit rusty.
Did you have a wonderful Thanksgiving?
It was a great Thanksgiving full of family. And so, of course, I'm going to say it was great.
I got a picture of your Thanksgiving table from your daughter.
I did. You did? Oh.
Yep. And it looked great. I don't know what to say. That's all I got. It looked great, Dan. Well, today, Dan Tate, did you know that we have a famous author in our midst? That's who we've got today.
I did know that.
I am so excited because the author of this book right here, it's up there, Chasing California, is with us to talk about all things author related and authory and Englishy and words.
Sounds like you need the help, Brandon.
You know I do. And I am super excited to have her. So should we get her in here?
Absolutely.
Okay, here she comes. Get ready. I think it's going to happen. Boom. There she is.
Hi.
Hi, Heather.
How's it going?
Oh, it's so good. Do you have to hold your phone? Are you stressing out?
I'm holding it, but it's not bad.
Okay.
My arm is resting on a cart.
Okay, great.
Oh, that's good.
I would just, first of all, this is Heather Jackson, everybody. We call her Heather Ann Jacksons, and she is also the author of Chasing California, Annie Jakes. So I have lots of questions about the book and lots of things, and Dan does too. We talked about this earlier today. But first, I'd like to know how hard you worked on color coordinating your bookshelves.
The toughest part was putting them into, we just put all the books into stacks of the same color. That was actually the hardest part.
Did you have all of the books in all of the colors, or did you go searching for colored books?
No, we had all the colors. I don't know which is worse.
I also arranged my background by rainbow color, as you can see.
Looks good.
Dan did too, as you can also see.
Yes, I'm sure you can see that.
All right, well, I'm going to start off with the obvious because your name is Heather Ann Jackson and your author name is Annie Jakes, right?
Yeah.
So I want to know why.
So when I started writing and it started getting to the point where I knew I needed like my name would go on a book kind of situation, I found that my actual name is pretty common. I'm not even the only Heather Jackson in my family. There's also some famous Heather Jacksons. So if you were ever to try to Google it, it would be hard to find. So I decided that I would do a pen name instead. So the Annie comes from my middle name because it's Anne. And then Jackson just kind of shifted to Jakes.
And I have now fact checked you. I have Googled Heather Jackson and there are lots.
There are a lot.
Wow.
And some really famous ones too. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Heather, that's such a practical reason. I had this romantic thought that, well, you just didn't want to get inundated with,
it's for my fans, Dan.
Fans, looking you up and actually finding you. But I guess that is a very practical.
Yeah, it was really a practical thing more than I don't know, whatever else.
I'm going to stay with Dan because I thought the same thing until I asked you. But I'm just going to believe in my heart that it's because you're so famous that you didn't want anyone to know your real name. Okay,
great.
But I also have her address. So if anybody wants her address, I will sell it.
I will sell it.
We're not above selling you out.
Good to know.
Okay, so I don't the thought of being an author. I don't know. I won't speak for Dan, but for me, it's my poor little whatever word brain cannot handle it. I don't even know how you
all the questions.
Yeah. Like, did you just wake up one morning and like, you know what I'm gonna do today? Write a book.
I mean, it started a really long time ago. It was initially, I don't know. I mean, it probably started when I was a kid. I always really liked writing, and then when it actually started for reals a couple years ago, I think it started with how much I love reading, and I would read a book that I loved, and it would leave me with this feeling of like, I want to create this feeling that I feel when I read books for other people.
Okay, so you got you got when you were younger, you started wanting to write books. But again, I say, when did you wake up and just go, today's the day I'm gonna put down this many pages of words? Hey, hold on, I want to tell everyone how many pages it is because I read it on the Kindle, so I don't know how many pages it was on there. But I also got that anyway. Oh, hold on, jeez, I gotta turn 283 pages. Like, did you wake up and you knew the story? Like, how?
Yes and no. Like the actual story originated with a lot of my students. So I'm a teacher and I teach teenagers. And I was having conversations with other teachers talking about how there's these teenagers that are just living their lives, but they're facing adult-sized problems as teenagers. And somewhere in my mind, it was just this moment that I was like, I need to write about these teenagers that are facing adult-sized problems. So that's where the storyline from the book came. It was originally my very first starting when I sat down and opened up a document and started writing. It started from the perspective of 5 different characters, and then throughout all the rewrites and edits and stuff, it changed and became all from the perspective of just one.
Go ahead, Dan.
No, so like one of the new experiences for me is I've known you for I wouldn't say from when you started writing the book, but through part of the book writing process. And so I appreciate the ability and writing that stuff down. And I've heard, numbers about for every 200 pages that actually end up in a book, how much was actually written. But how did you stay motivated? Because I imagine that it can get disheartening at times.
Definitely. And there were periods of time in the process where I wouldn't touch the project for a month or more. Because it does get a little bit disheartening when you feel like you've been writing and you look and you have 12 pages. But a lot of it was this sounds so silly, but I formed such a relationship with the characters that I was excited to tell their story. So there was that little bit of like, I was excited to figure out what was going to happen to them next and to be able to put that piece of their story onto the page. And then there were some times where it was a little bit more of a literal motivation where I would say, okay, I am going to write 10,000 words in the next 2 weeks. And if I do that, then I get to go buy new shoes.
That's great.
I would literally bribe myself to write.
I also have known you and saw some of these posts because, like, one of my favorite things is like you would post one day and be like, "This weekend I'm writing 1,800 words," or like you'd make these goals, and you would always. I want to think that you were sponsored by Monster because next to you at all times was a monster. Just me, like literally, this is always on my desk. Yeah. So I think they should probably sponsor you. And
I agree.
But anyway,
a lot of caffeine.
Having read through it and like when you came up with the idea, were you worried that it was going to be too? Because it feels like. Were you worried that it would be okay, sorry. It's so hard because I'm trying to wrap my mind around being an author and like starting from the beginning and like trusting my idea. And I guess my question is, when you came up with the idea, were you worried that too many people may have done your idea or something like it? Like, because what if you got all the way through this and then you were like, oh, I wrote a 400-page book and somebody else wrote the same one?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, one of the things there was an editor that I talked to towards the very beginning of the process. It's been quite a while since I talked to them, and she said something that was helpful for me as far as fighting that. Like, well, everybody's told this story. Like, there's nothing new in the sense of, oh, you've never heard this before. Like, it's realistic fiction. It's stuff that really happens. So, something she said to me that was really helpful was, everyone has told this story, yes, but you haven't told it. And it's this idea of like, it is something that other people have written about. There's things that happen in the book or things that have happened in other books, and the characters have characteristics that other characters have had. And but she kept saying, but it's your voice, it's your story. How are you going to make it unique? How are you going to make it interesting and different? And so that was always kind of burning in the back of my mind of, what can I do that makes this different, and why me? Why does it matter that I tell this story if it's already been told before?
So why you?
I felt like I had an interesting perspective going into this particular story, because I felt like I kind of had the dual perspective of, it's this story of these teenagers that are going through these really difficult, heavy things. And I see that day to day as a teacher. But I also, I mean, I'm old now, but once upon a time I was a teenager, and I went through not all, but some of these difficult things as well. And I still remember that. And so I felt like having both the perspective of seeing my students going through it and then going through some of those things on my own, I felt like it suited my writing to be able to tell this particular story.
I think as I was reading through it, because I totally get that. Like, I was like, ooh, been there. Like, you know what we're talking about, and yep, got it. But and I think that something that's so interesting is, and I don't know, this might just be me because I'm a theater person, but like the majority of time I was like, oh, this is gonna be a good movie. I can't wait to see this on TV. Like, because like my brain was very like I was all about that, because I don't know if you know this about me, and please don't hate me, but I'm not a good reader. Like, I don't like to read books. But this was like a movie. If that, like, it totally worked for me. And I know that like that's lame, but it totally worked for me. And I was like, okay, I'm in. I'll keep going. So, anyway.
No, I appreciate that.
So I'm gonna ask a question that might.
Why do all the questions feel hard to ask an author, right? Like, you feel like this like the hardest questions ever. I don't know. I'm maybe just intimidated by Heather. That might be it.
That's probably what it is.
No.
So I feel like I'm going to put you in a difficult spot, maybe.
Do it.
Because you're an author, but you're also an English teacher, right? And so having background in English, and like I love writing. I'm not writing books, but so I remember back to learning how to write, and they talked about the traditional, hey, you're the arc of your story and all that kind of stuff. Is that true? Like, I appreciate that's all based off of how stories are structured generally, but is that how the writing process goes? Like, do you have to come up with the full story before you start writing, or is it something that can kind of evolve and change as you go?
I think some of that's going to depend on the writer. Let me first say, I am not the expert when it comes to writing. I have gone to many, many classes and learned from many, many experts. So what I say is just what I've heard them say. But for me personally, I am what they call a plotter, where I like to plot out what's going to happen. I have a full outline of this and then this and then this and then this. Here's that story structure. Here's that, what they call the inciting incident, where like, hey, here's where the story takes off, and here's the climax of the story, and here's all of that for me has to be mapped out going into it, because I have to feel like I have a map. But there are a lot of really successful writers that I absolutely admire, who sit down to their computer and write chapter 1 and just go for it, and they're amazing writers. So I don't know that it's like a requirement. I think it's more reference, but I would say that those that I know that they go for it and just figure out the story as they go. I would say most of them would still agree that those aspects that you learn in English with the like, the plot chart and all that, that those things are still important and that those things still matter. They take them as they come rather than planning them out beforehand.
So Caitlin says that you're an insanely good plotting, and it feels like such unique and amazing talent, which I would agree. Like I think that my poor little squirrel brain would be like, oh, it'd be fun if they went to zip. Let's go over there. Like, I don't think I could ever like possibly plot out like you have done. But you mentioned like other authors and authors that you respect. Like who are some of your favorite authors that you still read? And do you ever have trouble like just being a reader and not being an author while you're reading, if that makes sense?
I almost have to like separate it in my brain when I'm reading. If I'm reading something just to enjoy it, I have to kind of shut off that writer portion of my brain, so that I don't sit there and I don't want to say pick apart their writing. It's not like a critical thing. It's just like an analytical thing. Like I don't sit and analyze, like, oh, okay, well then we're doing this because this character has to feel this way. And then so I kind of have to shut that part of my brain off. There are certain things I read specifically leaving that part of my brain on, because I want to learn from them. Like I'll read a book from an author that I really respect and I know that I have a lot to learn from. And so I will analyze their books a little bit just because I feel like that I can learn from what they've done. I read a lot. I enjoy reading. And so, some of my favorite authors, I read a really vast, like, array. I read a little bit of everything. So I like a lot of the young adult stuff. That's what I write. So, that feels at home to me. Huntley Fitzpatrick wrote one of my favorite books. It's called The Boy Most Likely To. That was amazing. Sarah Dessen is Queen. John Green is one of my favorites. I also really like epic fantasy. I don't know. A lot of people have been watching is it Shadow and Bone? That's on Netflix now, right? Leigh Bardugo wrote those ones, and she has another series called Six of Crows that I love. So I just read a little bit of everything. I don't know.
What I just learned,
as evidenced by all the books behind you.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
What I just learned is that Heather is much more learned than I. Awkward.
No, I just get lost in books. Like it's a little bit of my escape.
Oh, that's. I happen to have been cast in a show with Heather this summer, and one of my favorite moments from this summer is actually when Heather came to rehearsal. Heather came to rehearsal and was like, I need a word. I can't come up for a word for this spot in my book. And so she explained to a few of us what was happening. And for like days, we would just randomly throw out words like guttural, throat. I mean, it made no sense. And she didn't put any of them in the book that I chose. I just want to let you know that it didn't. I wanted something completely different that ended up in the book, but I can't say it on live TV. So
I'm sorry.
I don't find that surprising.
It was a very fun moment this summer because it went on like over text, like just randomly. People would just randomly text our group chat and be like, rainbow, or other words that I can't say.
That's true.
So you're also super involved in the arts. How do they work together for you? How does being an author, being a teacher, being a mom, all of that?
It's an interesting balance. Sometimes certain parts of my life get more attention than others. That's why, like, if I'm really involved in a show in some way, then I don't write quite as much during that time, or vice versa. It's interesting how much theater and writing overlap, and I actually think that's a lot of why I enjoy both of those things. Is because when I'm writing, it's a lot of that same character development that you do when you're working in theater, where you sit back and say, okay, what is the backstory here? What would that cause my character to do, and why, and how would I deliver this line? I just get to choose the lines when I write. But there's a lot of overlap. My kids are really involved. My kids are involved in theater. Even with my writing, my oldest daughter, she has written her first book. It becomes kind of a family thing.
Oh, we just got a question
Ooh.
from a watcher, a live watcher. Caitlin would like to know if you'd ever consider writing a play.
I have considered writing a play. I actually have an idea for one. It's literally just an idea, nothing on paper, nothing figured out yet, but I would consider it. It would be a little different for me, but you never know.
Well, I've heard there's a place up in Davis County that has a New Works Festival every year.
I have heard that.
So maybe you should check about submitting something to that New Works Festival. Just putting it out there.
I think I'll have to look into regard
No pressure.
Okay. So you said something earlier that resonated with me from a theater perspective too, about in regard to answering Brandon's question about what if they've written the book before? Because in theater, like it's not like we've got a huge selection of brand new stuff that are never done. So it really does turn into your own individual perspective on the character or on the show and things like that, which is something that I failed to appreciate before. Is every time you go see a show, even if you've seen it 3 or 4 times, you get a new perspective from the director, the design teams. Each actor are each going to bring something just a little bit different, and that makes it a whole new unique thing. So sorry, that wasn't a question, that was just a comment.
Heather, is there one character in your book that resonates most with you?
As far as like that I feel like I have in common with, or
I don't know, like, it's almost like a favorite child question, but like, is there like do you have one character that you're just like, this is my ultimate character, I love this person? Like, does that happen?
Yeah. There's aspects of every character that I admire about them, not in like I wrote this so well kind of way, but just like as a person, I admire this about you.
Yeah.
But as far as like overall, who's my baby, Drew is my baby. Drew and I have been through a lot together. And he never really changed for me, like from the very beginning of his story to figuring out, as I was mapping out his backstory and his personality and everything, like he just kind of came together, and from there I never really had to question him. There were some other characters that we got in some fights, and we had words, but Drew and I were always really close. And now you all know that I'm crazy.
Well, we already knew.
Here's the thing, though, Heather. I'm also like
crazy.
I love to read, and I've missed it because I used to commute. I used to work in Taylorsville, and I'd take the train, and so I had 2 hours almost every day of just sitting there quietly reading. And that was for 2 purposes. One, it helped pass the time. And second, if I was reading, then nobody tried to talk to me, which was another bonus. But you saying as an author that you argued with characters and things like that, I found as a reader, like, wait a minute, what did you do? Like literally getting upset because a character made a decision. And I'm like, how could you do that? So I can totally understand as an author, that would be even deeper.
Hey, Dan, I don't think they didn't talk to you because you were reading. I think they actually didn't talk to you because you were arguing with yourself. I think that might have actually been what it was. Sorry about that.
That's absolutely true. Another bonus is I could look crazy on the train and people would leave me alone. But aside from your book, but along with Brandon's question, if you had to pick a favorite character in sorry. Like, do you have one?
Like a favorite character in my book or in
in
any book ever?
Any book ever.
Oh Oh my gosh. This is the pick your favorite child question. Some of it's going to depend on my mood. Like, I know that's such a cop-out answer. But there are characters that I let, like, kind of call to me. Oh geez. There's so many. I really like, and this is not a shocker, but I really like morally gray characters. I do. I do. I'm sorry. Count of Monte Cristo, Edmond Dantes is like top 10. Let's see, Six of Crows is one of my favorite books. I mentioned it earlier. Cass Brecker is one of my favorites, and I think a lot of it is that it's really interesting for me to watch these characters that are so dark, but aren't villains. That for some reason is just super intriguing to me. Like I some of my favorite characters are villains as well, but I just think it's really interesting when an author can write a character that has a lot of darkness, but it doesn't have that evil streak. So those call to me.
I agree and think villain characters are actually the best characters in most things because they have so much more to play in them. I think a lot of times the hero or the heroine is easy, and villains have so many layers that they're so much more interesting to delve into. But that's just me. So everybody that I've talked to that has read your book wants to know if there's another one coming.
There is another one coming. It's kind of a sequel, kind of a spin-off. So it picks up where Chasing California stops, but it's no longer about Drew and his friends. It's focusing on a smaller character from Chasing California.
Will your baby or your friend Drew be involved?
He will make an appearance.
That's what I like to hear. Yes.
He will make an appearance. He's not in it a whole lot. Like, it doesn't necessarily follow him, but we will be hearing from him.
That's what I like to hear.
And you said that the character it's going to spin off of is mentioned in Chasing California, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna have to reread it and see if I can pick who it is.
See if you can map out who you need to know more about.
We should
start to see who I want to know more about.
Yeah. Let's start a pool, Dan. Like, let's get everybody to like put in $1 or a monster in this case, and whoever wins gets all the monsters.
Do I get to win?
No. That's
Whoever wins gets to split the monsters with Heather. Because
there we go.
Deal.
In order for the book to actually happen, she clearly needs.
I don't want to. I'm not going to call this out, but your husband may have just posted and says, "I know who it is." He meant to say who, but he said how. He corrected it as well. But
there we go.
So apparently, I've got to call your husband to find out how to win my monsters.
He would tell you too.
Okay, so before
we leave the competition,
because our time is running short, and but. This is the question we ask all of our guests, and we'd love to know what you think of this. But what does the words community matters mean to you?
Well, I mean, in my mind, community is any group of people who have a common interest or a common goal. And so I would say community matters is this idea that we're not alone. It's this idea of there are people out there who have similar passions or similar cares or similar interests or whatever it is, and that community matters in the sense that we can all work together toward those common goals and common interests. And so whether it's, I consider myself part of the writing community, part of the theater community, part of the, the community in which I live, all of these things, and that I don't have to be in those things on my own.
Absolutely love that. Great answer. Well, Heather, it has been an absolute joy talking to you about your book, because I think this is actually the first time I've actually sat and talked about your book. Like, we always end up talking about other things, but if people want more information, there's a link in the comments to the video, but you can go to your website, which is anniejakes.com. You can also follow you on social media, Annie Jakes author, correct? Yeah, Annie Jakes author. And I can't wait for the non-sequel sequel to the book, because I need it now.
Thank you.
If I'm being honest, I can't wait to see all of the posts of oh, I've got to write another 10,000 words today or this week. That's what I look forward to. And,
Yeah.
and when the book comes out will be great too. But part of why I enjoyed that book so much is because I felt like in a very small.
We lost Dan right in that moment. Oh,
Oh,
there
there
he
you
is. We lost
Oh,
you.
did
Right?
I freeze?
We didn't hear anything you said.
Never mind.
All right, Heather, we love you, and we'll talk to you later.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Bye. Okay, can we just talk about how great she is?
Heather's great.
I know. I absolutely love her, and her book is fantastic. And I literally I'm enamored by people like her that can do that, because there is no way I would have the patience to write. There's literally no way, and I'm so like proud to know her and call her my friend because she's amazing. So,
well, to me, right, there's creativity and then there's creation, right? And a lot of people might be creative and be able to interpret something and make it their own, but to be able to create something out of thin air is admirable.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Dan, we've done it. This was another lovely chat that I'm super glad we got to spend together.
Yeah.
Next week, we have Genevieve from Sweet Harmony Performing Arts Group joining us to talk about the arts up in Clearfield and what's happening there and all of her background. I learned a lot about her recently that I didn't know, and I can't wait to talk about. So anyway, that was a teaser for next week. So you should all come join us again next Thursday at 5 p.m.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, and as we always say, make sure you go out and support the arts. Go see theater. It matters. Live theater matters, and they need your support. Whether it's here or anywhere, please go support the arts. Okay.
Absolutely.
Love you all. Bye.
Bye, everybody. So long.